It was only in the final decisive battle between the two races that we, the Hell Realm, mustered all our forces and stormed the Heaven Realm. After losing one of our realm lords, we finally seized every last inch of the Heaven Realm. Fang Chen's pupils sharply contracted at these words. They sacrificed a realm lord. The spirit of the violet lightning artifact flashed through his mind. It seemed to be a fragment of a Heaven Realm lord's broken soul. The ancient war between the Hell Realm and Heaven Realm had been so brutal that even the Lord of a realm could fall on the battlefield. Fang Chen drew a deep breath and could not help asking, what happened next? Since the Hell Realm had conquered all of Heaven Realm, logic would dictate a total victory, but the present reality was clearly nothing of the sort. A flame of fury ignited in Shura King Ayu's eyes as he said angrily, within our Shura race, the Dark Shura lineage secretly colluded with ancient dark beings and brought them into the Heaven Realm. The Hell Realm's grand army was caught between two fires, assaulted from both sides by ancient giants and angels. That is why we collapsed. At that time, a newly ascended Hell Realm Lord fought to the death, holding the line so the main force could retreat. He perished there in the Heaven Realm. That battle grievously wounded the Hell Realm's vitality. The strength of our realm, Lord Tyr, has never recovered to this day. Fang Chen gave a slight nod. He recalled that Shura King Minjai had once mentioned that the Shura tribes still residing in the Heaven Realm were precisely the remnants of that ancient Hell expeditionary force. The Great War, just described by Shura King Ayu, matched those old tales perfectly, detail by detail. Fang Chen furrowed his brow and asked further, but why would the Dark Shura race betray us? This was the collective betrayal of an entire race, not a mere handful of defectors like the 10 sins of the Heartland. The Dark Shura clan was one of the 10 great Shura of the Hell Realm, weighty in status, power, and resources in every regard. Fang Chen truly could not imagine what colossal benefit could make such a mighty race turn its back wholesale. Shura King Ayu shook his head with profound secrecy, his voice deep. Why else? Of course, so that their own clan could give birth to a realm lord. Every world has a strict upper limit on the number of realm lords it can accommodate. Once that quota is filled, no one else can ever take that final step. Fang Chen rubbed his chin, a thought stirring within. So the number of realm lords in each world was fixed. Then the Sane fence on the Takesu ancient tree, which allowed breakthroughs to the Saint Realm, wouldn't they also be limited? He immediately pressed, Senior, may I ask why there is such a limit on realm lords? Shura, King Ayu countered, do you think the resources needed to break through to the deity transformation realm are great? Fang Chen pondered for a moment. From foundation, establishment all the way up to deity transformation, the resources he had burned through were already immeasurable, but at the very least, they could comfortably sustain a mid-sized sect. He nodded, very great. Shura King Ayu asked again, and what does it take to nurture a worthy realm cultivator? Fang Chen instantly thought of worthy Tianluo, who had used fortune to enter the worthy realm. That had drained all 800 years of Taikang Prefecture's accumulated fortune just to barely push one person through. Afterward, Taking, once among the top 3 prefectures, plummeted to the bottom and still had not recovered its breath after 8 centuries. He nodded again, his expression heavy, immensely great. 800 years of a Heartland prefecture's entire fortune was only enough to support a single worthy. Shura King Ayu's eyes brimmed with profound meaning as he said slowly, then, how many resources are required to give birth to a saint? Fang Chen froze. Calculating by fortune alone, entering the worthy realm required 8 centuries of a prefecture's fortune. Wouldn't becoming a saint deplete the entire Heartland's fortune for over a millennium? At last, he completely understood why the number of realm lords was limited. Shura King Ayu gave a slight nod, a hint of approval glinting in his eyes. It seems you have guessed it. Yes, it is a shortage of resources. Take our Hell Realm as an example. When 9 realm lords were born, they nearly consumed 90% of all resources under heaven. Only the last 10% remains, barely enough to sustain all living beings. At this juncture, if another Shura Emperor wishes to break through to Realm Lord, there are only 3 paths. The first path is to forcibly seize the remaining 10% of the realm's resources and ram through by brute force. Fang Chen's brow immediately knotted. That last 10% has long been divided and occupied by all the living beings of the world. It is utterly impossible to gather it together. Shura King Ayu's gaze darkened abruptly, and his voice deepened with it. Thus, one can only walk the second path. Sacrifice all living beings. Use their flesh and blood essence to forge a road to sainthood. Fang Chen halted abruptly, every hair on his body standing on end. sacrificing the entire living population of a world just to achieve sainthood for one person. He stood rooted to the spot, the storm of shock roiling in his heart nearly spilling over. As the saying goes, for a general to win fame, 10,000 bones must dry. Yet before the sacred peak of martial arts, it was different. The birth of one saint meant the annihilation of countless millions of lives. Shura King Ayu's tone was eerily calm as he continued, therefore, every realm strictly controls the number of realm lords. Your heartland is no different. Once the number of realm lords reaches its limit, all who come after, no matter how matchless their talent across the ages, can only wait. Only when a realm lord falls and everything he possessed returns to the world, can a new saint be allowed to emerge. Fang Chen suppressed the turmoil in his heart and asked in a deep voice, what if someone violates the limit and forcibly sacrifices all living beings to break through to the saint realm? Shura King Ayu said flatly, no one would violate it. That is the supreme iron rule of any world. Violators will be jointly suppressed by the saints, their body and soul annihilated. Fang Chen nodded slightly, understanding dawning in his heart. Indeed, forcibly breaking through to realm lord would be tantamount to destroying the entire world. How could the existing Saint Supremes sit idly by? A sudden realization struck him, and he blurted out, so the Dark Shura race's betrayal was because they wanted to claim a qualification to become a realm lord in the heaven realm. Shura King Ayu slowly nodded. Exactly. That is the third path. Seizing a qualification from another realm. An ancient realm lord of the heaven realm had perished, yet no new realm lord had been born to replace him. So our hell realm gambled the fate of an entire realm and launched that unprecedented war, and we came within a hair's breadth of success. Alas, man proposes, heaven disposes. The Dark Shura were beguiled by the ancient giants and struck a treacherous blow at the most critical moment, driving us Shura back into the hell realm. They, however, remained forever in the heaven realm and obtained the opportunity to ascend to realm lord. The last patch of fog in Fang Chen's heart finally dispersed completely. That earth-shaking war was, at its core, a struggle for the position of realm lord. Whenever a realm lord falls in a certain realm and no new lord steps up in time, it inevitably draws covetous eyes from other realms. Fang Chen let out a soft sigh of relief. Fortunately, no ancient saint has fallen in our heartland, otherwise your hell realm would have already invaded. Unexpectedly, Shura King Ayu shook his head and pronounced each word clearly. Who told you no ancient saint of yours has fallen? Fang Chen's soul shuddered violently, his pupils contracting to pinpricks. Senior, you cannot be joking. An ancient saint of our heartland truly fell. Shura King Ayu nodded solemnly. If not, why did the eastern waning moon go to such lengths to send his son into the heartland? Wasn't it precisely to covet your heartland's qualification for sainthood? Fang Chen was horrified. He had always known the Shura saint-child schemes were vast, but it had never crossed his mind that what the other party was eyeing was the qualification to become a saint of the human heartland. Thinking it over carefully, had the Shura saint-child's plans proceeded smoothly. With the scripture of suppressing hell and calming souls in hand, he would harvest the meritorious karma of all the dead in the wake of the heartland's great defeat and smoothly send to the Threek calamity-worthy realm. By that time, the heartland would have long been reduced to ruins, its mighty wiped out. He alone, a Threek, calamity-worthy realm cultivator, would break through to the saint realm, who would be left to compete with him. Alas, that mother and son miscalculated time and again. First they lost the scripture of suppressing hell and calming souls, then the heartland unexpectedly achieved a total victory, causing the Shura saint-child's wishful scheme to fall utterly apart. Fang Chen exhaled deeply, forcefully tamping down the shock in his heart, and asked, Senior, when did our heartland's ancient saint fall? Shura King Ayu hesitated briefly, then still answered, 1,000 years ago. For reasons unknown, during this meeting, Shura King Ayu was all but answering every question Fang Chen posed. Even secrets of the Hell Realm, dating back 10,000 years, were spoken of without reservation. Fang Chen's heart jolted again. The great war against the ancient giants 1,000 years ago. In that battle, did our human saints take the field? Wasn't it said that saints do not intervene? He didn't understand. If an ancient sage had truly intervened, how could the Central Plains possibly have been defeated? The 10 traitorous sinners of the Central Plains could not have caused even a ripple before a sage, much less rewritten the fate of the Central Plains. But Ayu Asura King shook her head. I also don't understand how that ancient sage fell. I only heard that whenever the old master mentioned him, her face was full of admiration. She said that as long as he was present, the Central Plains might not have been defeated even 1,000 years later. Fang Chen's mind was filled with bewilderment. 1,000 years ago, an ancient sage had actually fallen silently, with not a single record in the history books. Could it be that some unknown great terror had occurred back then? Just like the mysterious old man in the 9, dragon bronze chariot, who was being chased by something terrifying. Did the ancient sage of the Central Plains also encounter a similar ominous event and thus fall? What kind of existence plunged the myriad heavens and 100 realms into a dark age where no sages appeared? And what allowed the dark beings to rampage across heaven and earth? What exactly happened beneath this firmament 10,000 years ago? Fang Chen forcefully shook his head, suppressing his chaotic thoughts. The immediate priority was to root out the hidden threat, Tianji. After learning that a huge threat with the potential of an ancient sage was lurking in the Central Plains, Fang Chen's vigilance toward these foreign races instantly reached its peak. He immediately released his soul power, which spread out like an invisible net covering the heavens, frantically scanning the surroundings. With 2 divine transformation realm experts searching together, this seemingly boundless 10th floor was thoroughly swept in the time it takes to drink half a cup of tea. However, there was no trace of Tianji to be found. Ayu Asura King's heroic brows furrowed deeply as she asked in a grave tone, "Are you certain that woman from the Dark Asura clan truly came to the 10th floor?" Fang Chen's gaze was solemn as he slowly nodded. This junior has interrogated several Asura clan prisoners. This woman's destination is this underground world. He paused briefly, his tone growing even more certain. Moreover, when I arrived, the entrance to the underground world that I had personally closed had already been forcibly opened from the outside. The one who entered is undoubtedly her. But Ayu Asura King's eyes grew even more doubtful. Why can't we find her, of all people? Could she possess some method of invisibility capable of blocking the perception of 2 divine transformation cultivators like us? A cold light flashed in Fang Chen's eyes as he pondered. That doesn't make sense. If she had such a method from the beginning, why would she go to such lengths to summon the Asura army and descend upon the continent to stop the sects from interfering? She could have just sneaked in invisibly. Which warrior on this continent could have detected her? Unless... He slowly surveyed the vast and dilapidated expanse of the 10th floor, then suddenly turned and asked Ayu Asura King, "Senior, could it be that this 10th floor hides some special opportunity that allows one to enter such a perfect state of invisibility?" Upon hearing this, Ayu Asura King couldn't help but laugh in surprise. An underground world abandoned for 1,000 years. What could it possibly have? At that point, the smile on her face suddenly froze. Wait, there is one place where it's actually possible. And in all the world, only the Dark Asura clan would need such a place. Before her words finished, her figure flashed, turning into a blurry afterimage as she sped toward the east of the 10th floor. Fang Chen's heart jolted, and he followed without hesitation. Soon, countless undulating graves surged into their view like a tide. Towering stone steels stood densely, like ancient trees reaching into the sky. On the steel surfaces, bold and vigorous characters of the Hell Realm were branded in dark bloodstains. Asura Heavenly King annihilated the border wilderness. Blood Prison War God Nigeyu. Immeasurable Earth Treasury Dark Bodhisattva. Fang Chen's gaze swept over these tombstones, and he couldn't help but pause slightly. These must be the experts who fell here 1,000 years ago when the 2 great Asura clans fought over the Hell Soul Bell. Among them, there was actually one named Immeasurable Earth Treasury Dark Bodhisattva. It seemed this person was a monk from the Buddha domain of the Hell Realm. Speaking of which, the Buddha of the Hell Realm's Buddha domain had, as a person from the Central Plains, forcefully seized a realm lord qualification of the Hell Realm. It was just unknown why the other realm lords of the Hell Realm had agreed to his ascension. Logically, they could have suppressed him when the Buddha was about to break through. At that moment, Fang Chen's gaze was suddenly captivated by an extremely conspicuous tombstone. He fixed his eyes upon it. It was a rather grand and imposing tomb. A towering stele stood prominently before the tomb. On the stele, only a few simple large characters were inscribed. Asura Empress Dongfang Kanyu. Fang Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. Dongfang, wasn't that surname the noble surname of the Dark Asura clan's royal bloodline? And now this grand tomb had been violently blasted open. The corpse inside had disappeared without a trace. Besides this, another Asura king's tomb had also been opened. Even the tomb of the immeasurable earth treasury, Dark Bodhisattva, had not been spared. But strangely, the remains of Dongfang Kanyu and that Asura king were both missing. Only the body of the immeasurable earth treasury, Dark Bodhisattva, seemed not to have been taken away in time. Ayu Asura king stood before an Asura king's tomb with a grim expression and said in a deep voice, as expected, "This is the tomb of a bloodthirsty Asura king. His remains still contain his innate divine ability from when he was alive, camouflage. That woman called Tianji has activated this camouflage ability, which is why she blocked both of our senses." Fang Chen suddenly understood. If this ability disguised them as stationary dead objects, then indeed he and Ayu Asura king couldn't possibly have detected her just now. Gazing at the Dark Bodhisattva's remains, which clearly hadn't been taken away, Fang Chen narrowed his eyes and scanned the surroundings, then calmly analyzed. She probably hasn't gone far, otherwise she definitely wouldn't have left this body behind. Presumably, she had sensed the two of them searching for her and didn't dare linger a moment longer, which forced her to abandon the Dark Bodhisattva's remains. After pondering for a moment, Ayu Asura king's expression suddenly changed drastically, and she exclaimed, "This is bad. She might be heading for the 11th floor. Or maybe she's going for the Little Lord. No, the Little Lord is alone at the altar." Fang Chen's expression also instantly changed. He immediately made a decision. "Senior, quickly go find the Little Lord. I'll go check near the entrance to the 11th floor." Ayu Asura king didn't dare delay a second and instantly vanished with a flash. Fang Chen lingered for a brief moment. Looking at the jade, like remains of the Dark Bodhisattva, he thought for a moment, then decisively flicked his sleeve and stored the remains away. Then, with a few teleports, he arrived at the edge of the 10th floor. A pitch-black abyss stretched down to the 11th floor, like the mouth of a man-eating primordial beast. Streaks of dangerous black arcs burst out from the abyss from time to time, sizzling with heart-palpitating cracks. Above the abyss, a light screen woven with blood, red light hung suspended. Within the light screen, a silver coffin lay quietly. Whenever those black arcs touched the coffin, they immediately dissolved into nothingness. This was the remains of the Little Lord's mother, Empress Jugu. It was precisely because her remains suppressed this place that the hellish creatures active on the 11th floor could never break into the 10th. At that moment, a huge commotion suddenly erupted from the abyss. The roars of countless hellish beings merged into one, surging madly as if deeply enraged by something. Fang Chen's gaze sharpened. It was Tianji. She had indeed broken into the 11th floor. Without any further hesitation, Fang Chen decisively cast the selfless dust purification art, vanishing instantly from the spot. Then he leaped without hesitation into the boundless abyss. Although there seemed to be only a barrier layer between the 10th and 11th floors, it took Fang Chen the time of half a cup of tea to finally reach the bottom. A period that long was enough for him to traverse half a continent. It turned out that the distance between each floor of this underground world was actually that vast. Without a teleportation array, merely traveling on foot from the first floor to this 11th would take at least several hours. Such a distance was comparable to crossing the entire Taking Grand State. Fang Chen's conjecture about the nature of this underground world grew ever clearer in his mind. Just then his feet slammed onto the ground with a deafening boom. He had finally arrived at the legendary 11th layer that imprisoned a saint. This 11th layer stretched even more boundlessly than the 10th. He expanded his senses outward, but could not even detect the end of this layer. The sheer vastness of this realm might well exceed the entire continent's area. At this moment, the sky teemed with flying underworld creatures. Some resembled the mount of King Ayu Asura, possessing bloated earthworm-like bodies and magnificent butterfly-like wings. Others were strange beasts covered in lizard-like scales, yet unfurling fleshy bat-like wings. Upon the earth galloped a myriad of underworld creatures of every description. There were the familiar twin-headed hellhounds, and giant wolves wreathed in raging flames he had never seen before. The species were bizarre and innumerable, each one ferocious and hideous. The auras they exuded were immensely powerful, all without exception at the 8-aperture nascent soul stage or higher. Even more, Fang Chen faintly perceived several strands of divine transformation stage aura. Fang Chen's heart chilled with awe. Even divine transformation exists. Even an ordinary divine transformation powerhouse would struggle to retreat unscathed here. How arduous it must have been for the predecessors of the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion. His gaze hardened, and he murmured under his breath, "Today, on your behalf, I shall investigate every last secret of this 11th layer until it is crystal clear." Relying on his invisibility, Fang Chen stealthily crept to the very front of the horde of underworld creatures. Only then did he realize that these creatures were furiously giving chase to a single fleeing figure. It was a beautiful woman with long, blood-red hair, clad in a flowing silver dress, her features cold and severe to the extreme. Her eyes were shut, all life extinguished, unmistakably a cold, rigid corpse. No one knew how many ages she had been dead, yet she remained lifelike and vivid, her entire body exuding the lingering majesty unique to a sovereign. One could easily imagine that when she still drew breath, she must have been a supreme existence, towering above all. And her identity was not difficult to guess. The empress of the bloodthirsty Asura clan, Dongfang Canyu. That is to say, the Shura Holy Son's very own mother. The invisible pressure radiating from her kept the surrounding underworld creatures from daring to draw near, forming an immense vacuum zone. And beside the empress's corpse, walking shoulder to shoulder, was a strikingly beautiful Asura woman with a smug expression. It was none other than Tianji. At this moment, she finally revealed her true cultivation, without the slightest reservation, 9 aperture Asura. However, Fang Chen did not make any rash moves. Tianji was of the Dark Asura clan and skilled in controlling puppets, true, but Dongfang Canyu, an Asura Empress-level being, was not someone a mere 9 aperture Asura could manipulate at will. There had to be something strange about her. It was best to wait and observe quietly. Tianji's gaze shot into the distance, fixed intensely on a heaven-piercing stone pillar that thrust straight into the clouds. Deep within her eyes kindled a flame of barely containable excitement. He heard her mutter to herself, "The legend is actually true." 10,000 years ago, a lord of the Hell Realm, unwilling that the Hell Realm's territory had been carved away by the 9 saints of the Central Plains, did not hesitate to activate his realm artifact, the Void Tower, forcibly tearing open a passage between the 2 realms. The 11th layer where we now stand has long been deep within the Hell Realm. Once the Void Tower is activated, the very earth beneath our feet will completely disintegrate and link directly with the Hell Realm. At that time, the billions, strong army of the Hell Realm will pour through the Void Tower and reach the surface of the Central Plains directly. Fang Chen's expression was steady as still water. Everything matched exactly what he had conjectured in his heart. Indeed, this entire 11-layered underground world was actually a single, complete, colossal, magical artifact. The heavenly mystery pavilion at the pinnacle was the tip of that artifact, and the 11th layer was its base. Linking above to the Central Plains, connecting below to the Hell Realm, that immaculate saintly altar was the very artifact that could activate the Void Tower. Cold sweat broke out in a fine sheen on Fang Chen's back. He finally understood why the continent had the Iron Law: no divine transformation may enter, and sages must halt. If someone with sinister intentions ever activated that immaculate saintly altar and linked to the Hell Realm, what catastrophic consequence would that be? The armies of the Hell Realm would march in unimpeded, slaughtering their way into the Central Plains. The territory of the Central Plains was merely 1/20th that of the Hell Realm. The number of powerhouses below the Saint level likely followed the same proportion. Once battle was joined, the aftermath would be even more dreadful than the invasion of the ancient giants. The ancient giants, the Central Plains could still stand against. But a Hell Realm invasion would leave only the path of annihilation. Gazing at the pillar, Tianji's excitement grew increasingly hard to conceal. It is said that 1,000 years ago, when the Central Plains suffered a great defeat, the Hell Realm planned to exploit the Void and activate the Void Tower. It was the ancient sage of Yunhuang who placed the remains of a fallen ancient sage on the 11th layer, suppressing the Void Tower with the remnant saintly might, so it could not be activated. Otherwise, the present Central Plains would have long since become the Hell Realm's territory. A gloom settled over Fang Chen's heart. The answer that the heavenly mystery pavilion had sought for 1,000 years was finally unveiled. There truly was an ancient sage in the underground world. But he was not slumbering. He had fallen long ago. A swell of inexplicable sorrow welled up within him. The path of hope pursued by generation after generation for a millennium had in the end turned out to be nothing but an illusion, a flower in the mirror and the moon reflected in the water. Fortunately, today, 1,000 years later, the living beings of this generation's Central Plains had risen in resistance and blocked the catastrophe. Moreover, they were about to organize a counterattack and launch an expedition to the Celestial Realm. If the predecessors of the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion could learn of this news, they would surely be gratified. After all this talk, you should come out as well. Abruptly, Tianji spoke these words to the empty air. Fang Chen was fiercely startled, had he been exposed. But he quickly realized that Tianji was not addressing him. He saw Tianji's eyes emit a faint blue halo, and a point of blue soul. Fire slowly drifted out from within them. In midair, that fire transformed into hazy smoke, eventually coalescing into a frail, pale, skinned youth in white robes, his features delicate and refined. Though he was of the Shura race, he appeared exceptionally slender, entirely lacking the brawny frame characteristic of the Shuras. Cough, cough, the youth in white coughed, then looked at the pillar and said, "That sage of the Central Plains is indeed present. I can sense his existence." Fang Chen's pupils involuntarily contracted. Hidden within Tianji's very soul was an unfathomable remnant spirit. The feeling that remnant spirit gave Fang Chen was like a bottomless abyss, making his skin crawl all over. Just like when he had first encountered that white-robed skeleton. Of course, the remnant spirit of the white-robed skeleton was clearly far more complete, vastly surpassing the white-robed youth before his eyes. But even so, it still filled Fang Chen with immense unease. No wonder that when the members of the Imperial Observatory tried to forcibly search Tianji, they suffered a backlash on the soul level. So it was because such an existence was concealed within Tianji's soul. Hearing this, Tianji was overjoyed. This day has finally come. Once I refined the corpse of a Central Plains sage into a puppet, in this era where sages no longer appear, who in the 3 realms could do anything to me. Her purpose in coming here was actually to seize control of the sage corpse. Fang Chen's expression changed drastically. Once the sage corpse left the 11th layer, wouldn't the Hell Realm be able to activate the Void Tower and connect the 2 realms? This Tianji cared absolutely nothing for the safety of the entire Central Plains. If he had known this earlier, he should have killed her back then and eliminated this future blight. The white-robed youth calmly warned, "Don't be careless. He is, after all, a sage of the Central Plains. Even dead for 1,000 years, his residual might remains terrifying. A single misstep, and even my remnant spirit could be destroyed." Tianji produced a forearm, length black crystal, carved all over with eerie eye patterns. With just a single glance, it felt as if the soul would be swallowed whole by those eyes, utterly bizarre. With the Dark Shura clan's Guardian Realm artifact in hand, a mere sage remains can still be controlled into a puppet. Fang Chen finally understood why the Dark Shura clan had placed an Shura Empress-level bounty on her head. This woman had actually stolen the realm artifact of the Dark Shura bloodline. It also explained how she was able to control Dongfang Kenyu's corpse. With the realm artifact in her grasp, what difficulty was there in controlling the remains of an Shura Empress? Fang Chen secretly grew anxious. Could this woman truly succeed in controlling the sage remains? A flicker of killing intent flashed deep within his eyes, but after sweeping his gaze over the white-robed youth, he hesitated once more. This was not yet the time to strike. He held back, silently tailing them as they galloped across the vast terrain of the 11th layer. That stone pillar appeared to be right before their eyes. Yet even at Tianji's speed, it still took a full half-day of travel to finally arrive. Up close, Fang Chen finally saw the true appearance of the stone pillar. Its diameter rivaled the size of the heavenly secret pavilion, spanning hundreds of zhang in length and width. Its top pierced straight into the 10th level, and its bottom led directly into the netherworld realm. Even more bizarre, on this land of dense Yin Kai, where even a human deity transformation cultivator could hardly endure for long, a colossal tree actually grew. Its entire body was a vivid green, radiating dense spiritual Kai that turned the earth for 1,000 zheng around into a carpet of lush grass. Flocks of butterflies and tiny insects flitted joyfully about this world, centered on the meadow and the great tree. They formed a peaceful little world, the complete antithesis of the yin-ridden world outside. Fang Chen raised his gaze, his pupils shuddering sharply. Beneath that ancient towering tree, a white-robed youth sat quietly. He leaned gently against the trunk, as if merely asleep. His long black hair fluttered lightly in the breeze, and a butterfly rested on his shoulder, wings folded, resting peacefully. The dappled tree shadows rustled over him, stirring his white robes into a gentle flutter. Fang Chen swallowed hard. Could this be the ancient saint of the Central Plains? He looked at the other's face, but no matter how hard he focused, the features would blur and overlap, never becoming clear. As if invisible rules prevented him from peering closer. The white-robed youth nodded lightly. So it's the supreme ancient saint. To think the fallen one was him. Tianji's eyes blazed with intensity as she asked, full of expectation, "You know him?" The white-robed youth's voice was soft, filled with nostalgia for ages past, 10,000 years ago. Who wouldn't recognize the most brilliantly talented man of the era? His sudden rise once illuminated all the heavens, making all living beings believe that the era of divine descent had returned. To think that after 10,000 years, upon meeting again, he too has fallen, just like me. The heavens are truly merciless. The light in Tianji's eyes grew even brighter, barely able to contain her excitement. Does that mean I will possess an invincible body that can dominate the Saint Realm through all ages? The white-robed youth coughed and said, with him, you could indeed be invincible across the 3 realms. Tianji eagerly grasped the black crystal, saying, Senior, please lend me your aid. With my soul power, it's difficult to fully activate the realm artifact's full might. Once it's done, I will personally escort your remnant soul back to the netherworld realm. The white-robed youth gave a slight nod and reached out. The black crystal flew into his palm. He quietly examined the realm artifact and said, as expected of the Dark Shura clan's Hell's Eye, at its full power, even a saint would be affected. With my remnant soul, I can only unleash 1/10 of its might, barely enough to control a sage or a saint's corpse. Tianji urged even more impatiently, Senior, please strike quickly. But the white-robed youth put down the Hell's Eye, clasped his hands behind his back and said calmly, no rush. Before we act, let's deal with a hidden danger. Fellow Taoist, you've been following for so long, it's time to show yourself.
What?
Tianji's expression shifted as she asked in shock, someone followed us. Is it that Asura king you mentioned? The white-robed youth shook his head. No, stronger than that Asura king. His gaze shifted toward Fang Chen's position. Just a glance from him made Fang Chen feel his soul was about to shatter, his entire body turning bone, chillingly cold, as if he had suddenly fallen into an ice cellar. His concealment technique was instantly broken, revealing his whereabouts. Tianji recognized Fang Chen at a glance, exclaiming in shock. Instantly, the memories of Fang Chen's torment surfaced in her mind, especially the sensation of that black rod smashing against her head, which had caused her unbearable pain for days. The flames of fury ignited in her eyes. Kill him. This human deserves to die 10,000 deaths. Fang Chen endured the soul-level agony and activated the flawless domain, causing his nearly shattered soul to mend itself. Only then did the pained expression on his face ease slightly. His eyes filled with shock and suspicion. This white-robed youth in life must have been a netherworld realm lord. Most likely one of the 2 netherworld realm lords who fell during the expedition to the heavenly realm 10,000 years ago. A wisp of his remnant soul had fallen into the heavenly realm, and by chance, Tianji discovered it. One wished to return to the netherworld realm, and the other sought boundless power. Thus, they hit it off instantly, and actually conspired to craft a ruthless plan to seize the saint's corpse. This domain, it is somewhat peculiar. The white-robed youth raised an eyebrow, as if instantly discerning the domain's extraordinary nature. Tianji, beside him, was already impatient and urged repeatedly, Senior, kill him quickly, he must not learn of my secret. Fang Chen had now recovered, his gaze cold as a blade, slicing sideways at Tianji. How presumptuous! You're being toyed with in the palm of someone's hand and don't even realize it. Tianji, however, chuckled, her laughter tinged with mockery. What makes you say that? Fang Chen stood with hands clasped behind his back, his tone indifferent. You want to obtain the saint's corpse, but he desires it even more than you do. He is but a remnant soul of a realm lord. Searching the entire world, there is no second body more suitable for possession than that of the supreme ancient saint. How could he let you have it? You stole your clan's prized treasure and escorted him all the way here. All of this is nothing but a carefully laid trap for him to use you. Now that your usefulness is exhausted, he will never leave you even a sliver of a chance to live. Upon hearing these words, the smile on Tianji's face not only didn't fade, but grew even more intense. She shook her head lightly and said smugly, it is you who is presumptuous. Such a simple reasoning. Do you think I couldn't think of it? With those words, she opened her palm and actually produced a wisp of faint blue soul. It was precisely that of the white-robed youth. This wisp of blue soul was tightly wrapped in the giant emperor's curse power. With a mere thought, Tianji could use this soul fragment to instantly obliterate the white-robed youth's remnant soul entirely. Tianji smugly waved the soul wisp at Fang Chen and laughed fearlessly. Senior, this man is trying to sow discord between us, but his method is really not very clever. The white-robed youth suddenly let out a light cough and said in a tone so calm it was eerie, he's not exactly trying to sow discord. most of what he just said is actually the truth.
Mem?
The smile on Tianji's face instantly froze. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the soul wisp. Her voice strained. Senior W, what do you mean by that? The white-robed youth slowly turned his gaze over and met Tianji's eyes. In that instant, a mysterious Dao charm that could captivate all living beings emanated from his entire being. The once suspicious light in Tianji's eyes instantly transformed into entranced infatuation, staring unblinkingly at the white-robed youth, like a love-struck maiden awaiting favor. The white-robed youth extended his palm, his voice soft yet brooking no refusal. Give it to me. Without any hesitation, Tianji immediately and respectfully returned the soul wisp to the white-robed youth. The latter simply flicked his finger lightly, sending the curse power wrapped around the soul flying away, then opened his mouth and inhaled, swallowing the soul wisp back into his body, perfectly integrating it. At that moment, Tianji abruptly snapped back to her senses. Feeling the emptiness in her hand, she looked down in panic, her gaze trembling violently. Her heart sank as if plummeting into an ice abyss. She stumbled backward in terror, staring at the white-robed youth and stammering, Senior you. The white-robed youth's voice remained indifferent. If you had even half this human's intelligence, you would realize that my true destination was never some netherworld realm, but this saint's corpse. Of course, he wasn't entirely correct about one thing, and that is, I will not kill you. The white-robed youth slowly looked at Tianji, a faint smile curling at the corner of his lips. I still need you to lead the way to your Dark Shura clan's headquarters and along the way slaughter your entire clan. The smile on his face was as gentle as a spring breeze, but his words instantly chilled Tianji's hands and feet. Fang Chen, however, showed not the slightest surprise and said coldly, your Dark Shura clan caused the netherworld realm to lose 2 realm lords, forcing countless Shura clansmen to remain trapped in the heavenly realm and become prey for the ancient giants. If I were a netherworld realm lord, the first thing I would do after recovering would also be to exact vengeance and annihilate your entire Dark Shura clan. Tianji's lips trembled violently. She stared fixedly at the eye of hell clutched in the white-clothed youth's hand, her eyes brimming with boundless regret. She had truly been, just as Fang Chen said, toyed with in the palm of this hell realm lord's remnant soul from start to finish. She staggered back to Fang Chen's side in a daze, biting her lips slightly, and asked in a low voice, Do you have a way for us to survive? Fang Chen was almost amused by anger. Just now you were vowing to kill me to eliminate any future trouble, and now you turn to me for help. Your stance is truly as flimsy as your intelligence. Tianji's cheeks flushed slightly. She lowered her voice and said urgently, Times have changed. If you are willing to save me, I'll give you tremendous benefits. Fang Chen let out a soft scoff. Did he look like the kind of person who feasted on empty promises? Without the slightest hesitation, he raised his hand and grabbed abruptly, cleanly stuffing the bronze artifact of the Hell Desolate Beast and a vial of freshly drawn Hell Desolate Beast blood into Tianji's arms and shouted in a deep voice, Quick, summon the Hell Realm Lord. He hadn't been idle at all just now. The moment he sensed something amiss, he had already begun frantically stimulating the Hell Desolate Beast's blood circulation. Tianji was instantly stunned. Summon the Hell Realm Lord. Had Fang Chen gone mad? The one before them was the remnant soul of a Hell Realm Lord. If they summoned another Hell Realm Lord, would that one not aid its former comrade Lord instead of helping them, a traitor and a human? Why do this? Tianji asked, bewildered. Fang Chen shouted harshly, Don't ask. If you don't want to die, do it immediately. Tianji hesitated only for an instant in her heart, then gritted her teeth and resolutely obeyed. The sacrificial inscription on it had originally been passed on to Fang Chen by her, so now reciting it was naturally effortless. The white-clothed youth watched this scene with interest and said with a faint smile, summoning my companion to deal with me, interesting. He turned his head to look at Fang Chen, and in his eyes swirled a mysterious Dao rhythm once more, as he intended to control Fang Chen just as he had controlled Tianji earlier. I am somewhat curious about your domain. Let me see, what exactly is your domain? Alarm bells exploded in Fang Chen's heart. The opponent was a remnant soul at the Saint Realm, extremely capable of seeing through the secrets of his domain. At this critical, hair-trigger moment, he decisively took out the immortal king's indestructible bell, tightly covering himself and Tianji beneath it. Only the deafening clangor of clang, clang, clang suddenly erupted. That profound Dao rhythm struck fiercely against the snow-white bell, instantly triggering an unending tolling, as if even this ancient treasure could not bear the opponent's terrifying power. At the bell's originally existing damaged spot, under the intense fluctuations of this Tao rhythm, once again emitted a harsh cracking sound, forcefully torn open into a larger gash. Fang Chen's expression changed drastically, and he immediately raised a jade shield in front of him. A crisp crack sounded, and the surface of the shield instantly split into countless dense fractures. This made Fang Chen's heart ache as if bleeding. A supreme treasure that hadn't even been warmed yet, ruined just like that. Fortunately, he had finally managed to block the white-clothed youth's bewitching gaze that could charm all living beings. Seizing this opportunity, Fang Chen pulled the Asura Empress out of the spatial mirror and got straight to the point without any nonsense. I need you to do something for me now. Having said that, he directly took out the 2 pieces of the yin marrow tiger tally. The Asura Empress lifted her chin slightly, noble and dignified, her voice cold and clear like a jade flute. Dream on. Fang Chen had no time to argue with her at this moment. With a cold face, he struck at the heart of the matter. Madame, you wouldn't want any danger to befall your 2 children, would you? The Asura Empress's face instantly turned icy, grinding her silver teeth, shameless. Fang Chen directly forced the yin marrow tiger tally into her hand, his tone brooking no refusal. From now on, obey my commands. The Asura Empress bit her red lips fiercely, her phoenix eyes glaring hatefully at Fang Chen. After a brief struggle, she clenched her fist fiercely and finally chose to compromise, her voice tinged with humiliation as she said, word by word, as long as you don't harm my Hildren, you can do whatever you want to me. Fang Chen gave the order in a deep voice. Activate it. Command the hell creatures of this layer to attack that hell realm lord's remnant soul. The yin marrow tiger tally had an ironclad rule for use. It could only be activated by an existence at or above the Asura king level. Although all her cultivation had been sealed by the ancient saint, the Asura Empress was still a genuine empress. Activating this yin marrow tiger tally was more than sufficient. Hell realm lord's remnant soul. The Asura Empress's expression instantly changed drastically. As the Empress of the Dark Asura clan, she knew all too well how much the Hell Realm hated their bloodline. Between them, it was a mortal enmity that would only end with death. Now she didn't feel humiliated at all. Without Fang Chen urging her, she decisively joined the 2 halves of the tiger tally together. In an instant, the yin marrow tiger tally merged into one, suddenly erupting with an incomparably brilliant black light. A colossal tiger projection, like an ancient totem, fiercely projected into the sky overhead. The giant tiger roared skyward, emitting a supreme majesty that intimidated all hell creatures. The hell creatures, which had been surrounding them like a tide, were as if their bloodline had been instantly activated, one after another roaring skyward, their sound waves shaking the heavens. Like a boundless army awaiting the order. The Asura Empress, through the gap in the immortal king's indestructible bell, merely glanced at the white-clothed youth. With just that one glance, her heart raced with terror, and an indescribable fear surged from the depths of her soul. There was no mistake, this was absolutely a genuine Hell Realm Lord's remnant soul. How could she dare give him the slightest chance to make a move? She immediately gave the sharp command, kill him. Roar, roar, roar. The boundless hell creatures, having received the supreme command from their commander, instantly went mad, fearlessly pouncing to slaughter the white-clothed youth. The white-clothed youth had already raised his finger, pointing toward the immortal king's indestructible bell, preparing to deliver another fatal blow to them. But as the hell creatures surged crazily like a tide, he had to temporarily change his target, directing his attack at the boundless army of hell creatures. A meaningless struggle, the white-clothed youth said, his tone as indifferent as water. He merely tapped his finger lightly, and an invisible ripple centered on his fingertip spread out silently. Those crazed hell creatures that were pouncing forward all collapsed to the ground silently, like marionettes with their strings cut. The flying hell creatures, circling in the sky, also plummeted straight down. In that instant, an entire army of over 1,000 hell creatures died with their souls shattered. The battlefield that had been roaring to the heavens transformed into an suffocating, deathly silence in the blink of an eye. The white-clothed youth slowly moved his finger, slowly pointing toward the immortal king's indestructible bell, his tone as icy as frost. Your turn. The Asura Empress's expression instantly became extremely grave. She sighed in a low voice. He is indeed a realm lord. Even with just a wisp of remnant soul, he still possesses such world-shaking might. She shook her head slightly, a hint of helplessness in her tone. If I were at my peak, I might be able to fight his remnant soul. As for now, making a move would be no more than throwing an egg against a rock. However, right at this extremely critical moment, The space ahead suddenly trembled violently, and a deep void rift was forcibly torn open by a powerful force. The ritual to summon the realm lord's doppelganger had succeeded. The finger, the white, clothed youth had pointed in the air, paused slightly, and he slowly turned his head to look at that void. Fang Chen's gaze was also tightly locked onto that rift, as he silently prayed in his heart, "Please don't let it be that female realm lord." There are so many realm lords in the hell realm, surely. We won't summon her twice in a row, right? Just as he was silently praying, a long, snow-white, perfectly shaped leg was the first to step through the void. Next, a gently fluttering blood, red long skirt entered everyone's sight. A young woman who appeared to be about 30 years old, dressed in a blood, red long skirt, wearing a crimson flower crown with a dot of cinnabar on her forehead, stepped smilingly. Why, into this 11th layer? Hee, I've really been quite busy lately. The newcomer was none other than the doppelganger of that female realm lord again. Fang Chen's vision went black, and he almost couldn't catch his breath. Could it be that this hell realm had only her as a realm lord? How could they have summoned her again like this? The hell realm lord's avatar, a faint smile on her face, her gaze flowing as she surveyed the gathered crowd. When her eyes swept over the white-robed youth, she froze abruptly. Then, on that jade-like countenance, an expression of extreme shock suddenly bloomed. Tongyuan realm lord. You are still alive. The white-robed youth smiled calmly, a trace of age-old vicissitudes flashing in his eyes. Bayan, it has been 10,000 years. So it was you who succeeded my position as realm lord. Very good indeed. The two of them were both born of the enchanting Asura bloodline. 10,000 years ago, when the Tongyuan realm lord fell, Bayan was still only an Asura emperor. Now meeting again, one is but a fragmentary soul, while the other has already become a realm lord. The two gazed at each other, as if a single glance encompassed the passage of 10,000 years. Bayan realm lord's avatar's eyes reddened slightly. She bowed deeply, her voice tinged with a sob as she paid her respects. Bayan welcomes the return of the Tongyuan realm lord. The Tongyuan realm lord simply smiled lightly, waving his hand and saying, "Someone has summoned you. You should first attend to the summoner's business." Bayan realm lord suppressed the mist in her eyes and turned to look at the summoner. In an instant, her eyebrows shot up, and a heaven-shaking killing intent erupted violently. Dark Knight Asura clan. You dare return, and even dare to summon me. You are courting death. Tianji's mouth was full of bitterness the moment she saw Bayan realm lord's avatar, with tears in her eyes, welcoming the return of Tongyuan realm lord. Her heart sank into the abyss. Is that fellow Fang Chen afraid that Tongyuan realm lord's remnant soul isn't destroying them quickly enough, so he specifically summoned Bayan realm lord's avatar to help? Fang Chen, you really are a jinx. Bayan realm lord shifted her gaze to the Asura empress, the killing intent in her eyes intensifying further, sneering coldly. Even the Asura empress has come in person. It seems you truly have no fear of death. The Asura empress's expression changed drastically, and without hesitation, she dove headfirst back into the spatial mirror. In the next moment, with practiced movements, she tied herself up tightly and promptly went to sleep. Everything that happened in this place had nothing to do with her. She knew nothing at all. Bayan realm lord's gaze continued to sweep around and quickly settled on Fang Chen. She first blinked in surprise, almost thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her. After she focused her eyes and confirmed that the person was indeed Fang Chen, her fragrant shoulders trembled violently. Gritting her silver teeth tightly, she squeezed out 2 words through clenched teeth, each one deliberate. Fang Chen. Fang Chen gave an embarrassed smile, knowing in his heart that the immortal king's indestructible bell would certainly not stop her. So he simply put the bell away. He waved his hand stiffly and greeted her with a rigid expression. Senior Realm Lord, 3 days apart truly feels like 3 autumns. How have you been lately? Bayan Realm Lord's avatar was trembling with rage. Gazing at Fang Chen's handsome, innocent-looking face, she felt a surge of fury so intense it made her chest heave violently. Good, I'm very good. I'm simply superb. She fiercely clawed at a void rift, snatching a handful of shimmering memory silver sand from across the realms, her voice furious as she demanded, "With this sand, how could I possibly be good? You wretched little wretch, using this sand to deceive me, does your conscience not ache at all?" Fang Chen raised his hand to touch his conscience and said with feigned seriousness, "You know, it actually does hurt a little." He then winked and added, "But if you're willing to return the sand to me, my conscience naturally won't hurt anymore. After all, this is my treasure. Losing it truly would cause me real pain." Bai and Realm Lord's avatar felt her lungs about to burst from fury, this shameless cur. The nearby Tongyuan Realm Lord witnessed this and couldn't help but ask, Bai-an, do you know him? Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar glared fixedly at Fang Chen, her mouth opening and closing, but she found the matter too embarrassing to speak of. Finally, through gritted teeth, she said, nothing, merely a little private grudge. To have her admit in front of the senior that she, a majestic realm lord, had been tricked out of her realm weapon, she truly lacked the face for that. For now, better to handle the summoner's request first. The Central Land Ancient Saint allowed her entry into this place on the precondition that she must abide by the summoning contract. If she dared to disregard the summoning contract and attend to other matters, she would be forcibly expelled from this middle realm in an instant. She gave Fang Chen a vicious glare and threw down a harsh threat. Later, I'll settle accounts with you thoroughly. Then she turned to glare at Tianji, demanding in an icy tone, Speak. What exactly did you summon me for? It had better be something I can accomplish, or your chance to summon, this time, will be wasted in vain. The implication behind these words was that she could absolutely refuse to carry out their request. But if that happened, she would also be immediately expelled by the rules of this place. Tianji's gaze hesitantly turned to the Tongyuan Realm Lord, asking tentatively, Can you kill him? Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar immediately let out a cold laugh and retorted, What do you think? Asking her to kill the remnant soul of her own senior, how could she possibly agree?
Rumble?
A muffled thunderclap suddenly resounded from the sky. An invisible force of rules instantly enveloped her, about to forcibly expel her from this heaven and earth. Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar's expression shifted slightly. She quickly changed her words, Hurry and change your request. Tianji looked helplessly at Fang Chen. Since the other party was unwilling to destroy Tongyuan Realm Lord's remnant soul, she naturally couldn't force her. But Fang Chen's heart felt not a trace of disappointment. Because he had never expected that Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar would kill Tongyuan Realm Lord's remnant soul. They were one and the same side. How could they commit such fratricide? He took a deep breath and directly stated his long-prepared plan, then immediately take this realm Lord's remnant soul back to the Hell Realm. This is the request for summoning you. Upon hearing this, Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar's tense expression immediately relaxed. Could this even be considered a request? Even if they hadn't said a word, she would have respectfully and safely brought Tongyuan Realm Lord's remnant soul back to the Hell Realm. But at that moment, Tongyuan Realm Lord calmly spoke, firmly vetoing, Do not agree to it. His gaze turned to the distance, and a fervent light ignited in his eyes. I will seize this body of the supreme ancient saint. Bai-an Realm Lord's avatar then noticed that beneath the towering ancient tree in the distance, a corpse exuding a mysterious aura lay still. She fixed her eyes on it, her pupils suddenly contracting sharply. She blurted out in shock, An ancient saint's remains. Immediately her gaze blazed brilliantly like scorching flames, burning fiercely. A remains of this level was absolutely a heaven, defying opportunity that all realm lords in existence dream of. For if one were to fall one day, the remnant soul could immediately seize such a body and be reborn. How rare are realm lords in this world, and a complete realm lord's body is an unparalleled treasure that can only be encountered by chance, not sought. Even if one searched across all heavens and myriad realms, one might not find a few such well-preserved corporeal shells. Her breathing inadvertently quickened, and it was only at this moment that she finally understood Fang Chen's intention. This kid wanted to use her hand to prevent Tongyuan Realm Lord from taking the Supreme Ancient Saint's remains. After a brief moment of contemplation, she cast a gaze full of puzzlement at Fang Chen and asked, perplexed, You don't seem like a fool. Then why would you think that summoning me here would make me help you stop my own senior from seizing the Supreme Ancient Saint's remains? She shook her head and continued in an adamant tone, Whether emotionally or logically, publicly or privately, I could never agree to such a request. After all, if Tongyuan Realm Lord successfully seized this Supreme Ancient Saint's remains, the Hell Realm would gain an unparalleled powerhouse out of thin air. This deal seemed incredibly advantageous no matter how you looked at it. She truly couldn't fathom what reason she could possibly have to stop it. Fang Chen, with an indifferent expression, calmly asked back, No, you will stop him. Then do you understand why the primal ancient sage's remains are here? The Parameter Realm Lord's clone folded her arms across her chest, snorted coldly, and said, Of course I understand. If not for his remains suppressing this place, 1,000 years ago, we would have already broken through the barrier between realms and annihilated your central planes in one fell swoop. Fang Chen, with complete composure, pressed on, Then what if, at this critical juncture, the barrier between the two realms is completely breached? Parameter Realm Lord's clone blurted out instinctively, naturally, we would still destroy you. Mid-sentence, she seemed to suddenly realize something terrifying. Her voice stopped abruptly, her expression froze, and her arms, originally folded across her chest, involuntarily dropped to her sides. A look of extreme gravity spread rapidly in her beautiful eyes. After a moment, she said in a much lower voice, "Senior Tongyuan Realm Lord, this body, you must not seize it." Tongyuan Realm Lord raised an eyebrow slightly and asked heavily the reason. The Parameter Realm Lord's clone bit her red lip gently, apologizing. "It is our incompetence as the younger generation. The Hell Realm is still deeply embroiled in a brutal war with the ancient giants, and the outcome is far from decided. On the other hand, the Central Plains have just won a great victory, and their morale is at an all-time high. If the realm barrier is breached at this time, and the Central Plains invades our Hell Realm in force, sandwiching us with the ancient giants, then the tragic catastrophe that befell the Heaven Realm 10,000 years ago is likely to repeat in our Hell Realm. And this time, we will have no path of retreat." The always calm face of Tongyuan Realm Lord suddenly became extremely grave at this moment. He had even overlooked the crucial information that the situations in the two realms were completely opposite. Now the Central Plains' momentum is like a rainbow. If they learn that the ancient sage remains have been taken by the Hell Realm, won't they immediately pour through the opened passage and charge into the Hell Realm with soaring morale? Although the Central Plains' overall strength is far inferior to the Hell Realm is at an extremely dangerous juncture, and the Central Plains' involvement could the last straw that breaks the camel's back. Moreover, beside Fang Chen right now is an Asura Empress of the Dark Shura clan. Does this not mean that the Central Plains and the Dark Shura clan might have already allied? If the Dark Shura clan brazenly enters the fray to return to the Hell Realm, then this battle for the Hell Realm is probably doomed. Considering this terrifying consequence, Tongyuan Realm Lord couldn't help but hesitate. He gazed reluctantly at the primal ancient sage's body, his eyes full of struggle. If he missed this opportunity, he would never find another suitable vessel to possess. For the rest of his life, he would never recover his former peak state. Gritting his teeth fiercely, he said in a deep voice, "Parameter, go back." The Parameter Realm Lord's clone turned pale, as Tongyuan Realm Lord intended to possess the body by force, regardless of the safety of the Hell Realm. She anxiously pleaded, "Senior, please think twice." Tongyuan Realm Lord coughed heavily, his tone becoming extremely weak. "For the Hell Realm, I died and my Tao vanished. A mere remnant soul, stranded in the Heaven Realm for 10,000 years, with no one to rescue or care for me, yet I have no regrets. I think I have done all I can for the Hell Realm, showing the utmost benevolence and righteousness. Now, it's time I considered myself. This is a once-in-an epoch opportunity I've waited so long for. I cannot let it slip." With those words, he hesitated no more and walked directly toward the primal ancient sage remains. The Parameter Realm Lord's clone struggled internally for a moment, then resolutely flashed to intercept him, her eyes full of apology but also unwavering determination, saying, "As the Realm Lord of Hell, I will never allow anyone to threaten the safety of the Hell Realm. Even if you are the former Realm Lord, no." Tongyuan Realm Lord's voice suddenly dropped, exuding a chilling pressure. "Step aside." He slowly raised the Eye of Hell and said coldly, "When I was risking life and limb for the Hell Realm, you were merely an Asura Emperor. Now you have usurped my position as Realm Lord, and you still want to obstruct my possession. Is this the repayment you give me?" The apology in the Parameter Realm Lord's clone's eyes deepened. It sounded as if she was indeed ungrateful and had completely failed to live up to Tongyuan Realm Lord's sacrifices. But at this critical moment, she absolutely would not allow Tongyuan Realm Lord to seize the body. "Senior, please be patient. Once we've dealt with the threat of the ancient giants, I will personally plan an expedition against the Central Plains. I will surely find a sage's body for you. I swear on the Asura god." Tongyuan Realm Lord's eyes remained unmoved, still as indifferent as ever. "Say it again, step aside." Having barely survived in the Heaven Realm for a full 10,000 years, the temperament of this former Hell Realm Lord had ultimately changed. The man who once sacrificed himself without hesitation for the Hell Realm now disregarded its life and death for his own sake. The Parameter Realm Lord's clone was heartbroken, but had no choice but to act decisively. "Senior, forgive me." She suddenly vanished from the spot, and Tongyuan Realm Lord's remnant soul disappeared at the same instant. Immediately after, a terrifying sage level fluctuation erupted violently, the shockwaves tearing apart the entire Black Land. Deep in the cracks of the earth, the transparent base of this artifact was faintly revealed. Looking down, beneath the base was a gloomy world of churning magma and howling sinister winds. That was unmistakably a corner of the Hell Realm. Fang Chen's heart tightened. He quickly took out the Immortal King Indestructible Bell, shielding himself and Tianji tightly, and fled desperately toward the large tree where the primal ancient sage was. Because he keenly noticed that while everything around was falling apart, that patch of greenery within 1,000 jang radius of the ancient sage remained unshaken. The butterflies and little insects in the grove were still joyfully fluttering, completely unaffected by the outside. As long as they could flee there, they would be safe. He held up the Immortal King Indestructible Bell and teleported toward the sage remains. But who would have thought that this action drew Tongyuan Realm Lord's attention? The old Realm Lord mistakenly thought Fang Chen and the others were trying to snatch the sage's body and immediately let out a cold snort. A terrifying sage pressure swept over in an instant. The Immortal King Indestructible Bell immediately tolled loudly, trembling violently. Inside the bell, Fang Chen groaned, a metallic sweetness rising in his throat, while Tianji beside him vomited blood on the spot. Her vision went dark, and she collapsed limply, life or death unknown. And this was merely the forewave of the sage pressure. Once that sage pressure truly enveloped them, both would die instantly on the spot. Fortunately, at this moment of extreme peril, the Parameter Realm Lord's clone forcibly blocked the sage pressure, absorbing most of its power. Her clone immediately became ghostly and transparent. She turned her head and glared fiercely at Fang Chen. I actually have to protect a damned wretch like you. There was no other way. If Fang Chen and Tianji died, and the summoners were all gone, her summoned clone would immediately be expelled from the Central Plains. By then, no one could stop Tongyuan Realm Lord from seizing the body. Full of frustration, she lightly slapped the Immortal King Indestructible Bell with her backhand, sending the great bell straight into that 1,000 jang greenery. Then she turned and fought fiercely with Tongyuan Realm Lord again. Inside the greenery, Fang Chen crawled out of the Immortal King Indestructible Bell, his kai and blood churning inside him, nearly spitting out a mouthful of blood. But at this moment, his injuries rapidly healed at an unbelievable speed. And Tianji, who was unconscious and severely injured, also fully recovered, opening her eyes in a daze. Not only that, a faint sacred light emanated from their bodies, warm and exceptionally comfortable. Could this be the sage lingering blessing? Fang Chen, full of reverence, bowed deeply to the sage remains. Tianji let out a long sigh and murmured, finally saved. Hearing this, Fang Chen immediately looked at her. Tianji also instinctively looked at Fang Chen. The two just stared at each other, and suddenly they both remembered they were enemies. Tianji awkwardly stepped back, chuckling dryly. Big Brother Fang, everything before was a misunderstanding. This is like the flood, washing over the Dragon King Temple family, failing to recognize family. Fang Chen's face instantly hardened, misunderstanding. I can overlook you asking the common Abyss Realm Lord to kill me. I can even dismiss you coveting the sage remains of our middle continent as a mere clash of interests. But you rallied the Asura clan to invade the mainland and massacre innocent disciples of the 9 sects. This I cannot overlook. Though casualties were few, this had utterly crossed Fang Chen's bottom line. Sensing the sharp killing intent radiating from Fang Chen, Tianji's face paled and he cried out frantically, "Wait, let me explain. I never ordered them to slaughter indiscriminately. I only told them to tie down the mainland's native sects and keep them from interfering." Fang Chen shook his head, expressionless, no difference, die. With a sharp sweep of his sleeve, a terrifying surge of spirit transformation power erupted, instantly blasting Tianji's body into a cloud of blood mist. Not a shred of mercy. But what made Fang Chen suddenly freeze was that the blood mist that had been Tianji condensed back in the blink of an eye, reforming into a completely intact Tianji. She let out an instinctive death shriek, yet immediately realized she felt no pain at all. She couldn't help but look utterly bewildered. Fang Chen was stunned too. Was this temporal reversion? No, there was no fluctuation of time laws in the surroundings. It was the sage legacy. Within 1,000 yards of the sage, all could be spared from injury and death. Fang Chen, half in disbelief, raised his hand and drew purple lightning, slashing at Tianji with a whistling strike that cleanly cut her in two at the waist. Yet the result, Tianji's severed body merely flashed with light, then merged back together. Just as he thought. Within the sage legacy boundary, death was simply impossible. But this came at a cost. The 1,000 yard wide grassland shrank to a mere 500 yards in an instant, the outer 500 yards rapidly decaying into a mire of mud. Restoring Tianji's life just twice had already consumed over half of the sage legacy here. Once the sage legacy was exhausted, there would be no more of this resurrection from the dead. Fang Chen's heart suddenly jolted. If a close relative had just died, could I bring them here and revive them? But the thought merely flickered, and he shook his head fiercely, dismissing the possibility. Tianji's 2 revivals occurred, while her soul had not yet dissipated, merely restoring her body. Once both body and soul were destroyed, bringing the remains here would be useless. Unless one could keep this sage's body perpetually close, immediately retrieving it the moment of death to save someone. But take the sage's body away. Fang Chen gazed at the visage of that holy corpse and found that even at such close range, he still could not make it out clearly. He did not believe for a moment that an existence he couldn't even see could be easily carried off. Moreover, even in death, the primeval supreme sage was suppressing the passage to the hell realm, safeguarding the peace of the middle continent. How could he ever think of taking him away? Steadying his mind, Fang Chen tucked away the thought and looked back toward Tianji. Since he couldn't kill her, he could only capture her for now and deal with her once they left this place. I'll spare your life for the time being. With a great hand, Fang Chen directly stuffed Tianji into the spatial mirror, then brought out the last section of immortal binding vine and tied her up tightly. Once finished, not a single inch of immortal binding vine remained. Fang Chen couldn't help muttering, "Your family is far too large. My immortal binding vine can't keep up." Muttering done, he exited the spatial mirror. Within the mirror, things instantly grew lively. Tianjian and Tianqin stared in shock at their newly added companion and cried out together, "Third sister, how did you get captured too?" Tianji blinked, gazing blankly at them. "Eldest brother, second sister, and mother, how did all of you end up seized by him?" The whole family looked at each other, all struck silent by the sheer awkwardness of the situation. Every last member of the family had fallen into the hands of the same human. Could there be a more absurd thing in this world? After a long moment, Tianqin cleared her throat dryly and forced out a comforting tone. "Don't worry. Father is still out there. He'll rescue us." Tianjian's face was also full of embarrassment, but he soon caught on, glaring fiercely at Tianji, his voice suddenly cold as ice. "You wretch, you actually stole the realm artifact of our Dark Shura branch. Do you have any idea how catastrophic this is?" Tianqin also came to her senses, her pretty face chilling. "Third sister, you've gone too far." The Asura Empress, who had been feigning sleep, abruptly sat up, her phoenix eyes blazing with fierce killing intent as she fixed them on Tianji. "Your ambition is truly not small. You dared to covet the middle continent sage puppet. Where is the hell's eye? Hand it over." Tianji shrank her neck, plummeting in an instant from the warm atmosphere of family reunion into an icy abyss. She said weakly, guilt-tridden, the hell's eye was swindled away by the common abyss realm lord. "What?" Tianjian and Tianqin's faces changed drastically, and in an instant spittle flew everywhere. Poor Tianji was bound too close to them. She had nowhere to hide and ended up sprayed with a face full of saliva. The Asura Empress felt the world darken before her eyes, gritting her teeth. "The realm artifact of our Dark Shura clan has thus fallen into the hands of the Hell Realm. Tianji, you've caused a disaster. Your father will never pardon you." Tianji's face crumpled, full of grievance. "I never imagined the outside world could be so treacherous. The common Abyss Realm Lord is an old monster. I could understand his cunning, but that Fang Chen, younger than me, how can he be so vicious? Locking me in here with all of you, isn't he just trying to kill me? Truly venomous." Hearing Fang Chen's name, the whole family ground their teeth in hatred. The Asura Empress sighed deeply and consoled them from another angle. "Look at it this way. It's actually fortunate that your Hell's Eye fell into the Hell Realm's hands. Had it fallen into Fang Chen's, that would truly be disastrous." Outside, the battle between the Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar and the common Abyss Realm Lord did not last long. Suddenly, a dull, soul-tearing explosion tore through the air. The common Abyss Realm Lord's remnant's spirit body was directly blasted, losing nearly half its form, and his already feeble aura grew even more withered and frail. The Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar seized him with one hand and casually tore open a deep rift of void. Before leaving, she glared fiercely at Fang Chen and spat, "You dog, our score is far from settled." Fang Chen's heart tightened. "Hey, couldn't you just settle it here?" He hurriedly called out to her, speaking grandly, "Wait, let's make a deal. Hearing the word deal, the Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar felt a faint ache in her chest and immediately rebuked, "First give me back the life, and death ledger." To her surprise, Fang Chen answered without the slightest hesitation, "All right." And saying so, he actually pulled out the life and death ledger. Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar froze momentarily, her face full of disbelief. Fang Chen was truly willing to return the life and death ledger. She stared at him suspiciously. "Would you really be so kind?" Fang Chen smiled faintly. "Of course not for free. Let's exchange Hell's Eye for the life and death ledger." See, she knew this fellow would never show unwarranted goodwill. She snorted coldly, frowning. "Hell's Eye is far more powerful than my life and death ledger. If I trade with you, won't I come out at a loss?" Fang Chen seemed to have anticipated her words and replied calmly, "No matter how powerful Hell's Eye is, it is not your life-bound artifact. Once you return to the Hell Realm, will it truly belong to you?" At this, the Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar hesitated. The Hell Realm had more than one Realm Lord. This former Traitor's Realm artifact could hardly be hers to decide alone. It would have to be jointly determined by all Realm Lords. As the one who acquired it, and the strongest among them, it would most likely fall into her hands in the end, but she would inevitably have to pay a considerable price. Rather than that, why not simply trade it back for her own life and death ledger? With a swift mental turn, she decisively agreed. "Fine, we'll exchange." The Far Shore Realm Lord's avatar readily produced the Hell's Eye, a black crystal pillar engraved with eerie eye patterns, radiating a soul, seizing power. It was indeed the genuine Hell's Eye. Fang Chen fixed her with a half-smile and suddenly asked, "Where is my memory silver sand? Let me see it." The other Shore Realm Lord's avatar's expression stiffened, and she reluctantly took out another Hell's Eye. She crushed the first one firmly in her hand, and the crystal pillar dissolved into a handful of flowing memory silver sand. So she had also played a little trick, intending to use memory silver sand to swindle the Book of Life and Death back. She snorted lightly and stubbornly said, "I just took the wrong one. Don't overthink it." Fang Chen smiled without a word and merely watched her silently. This woman had actually intended to repay him in his own coin. He slowly spoke, "Just return the memory silver sand to me as well. After all, you won't fool anyone anyway." "You?" The other Shore Realm Lord's avatar gritted her teeth and, extremely displeased, growled, "Take it." She waved her hand and directly tossed both items over. Fang Chen let them fall to the ground, carefully confirming there were no traps, and only then returned the Book of Life and Death. The other Shore Realm Lord's avatar snatched the Book of Life and Death, squeezed it repeatedly, examined it thoroughly, and only after confirming it was not memory silver sand did she let out a long sigh of relief. A dignified Realm Lord, forced to develop anti-fraud instincts. She shot Fang Chen a glare, her tone relaxing a bit. "I'll count this as you acting like a human for once. Tell me, has anyone else in your Central Plains ever obtained another Book of Life and Death?" "Him?" Fang Chen's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't that other person him? But when he had duplicated the Book of Life and Death, he had been alone. How would the other Shore Realm Lord's avatar know? Could it be? He instantly understood the dog bowl's full name wasn't anything like a duplication bowl, but the treasure-gathering bowl. As the name implies, it gathers treasures from all directions. It could not duplicate a treasure out of thin air. It could only gather an identical treasure into one's possession. This also explained why one of the conditions for using the treasure-gathering bowl was that it could only be used on non-unique items. If that's the case, if he threw the Book of Life and Death that Lu Zhu held into the dog bowl, wouldn't he be able to gather back the one in the other Shore Realm Lord's avatar's hands? Then she would trade something for it again, and he would gather it again round and round. Endlessly, wouldn't that make him rich overnight? "What are you smiling about? I asked you a question." The other Shore Realm Lord's avatar noticed the slight curl at the corner of Fang Chen's mouth, and without a second thought, hugged the Book of Life and Death tightly to her chest. Somehow she felt that this Book of Life and Death was about to leave her once more. Fang Chen came back to his senses, his smile growing even more friendly and gentle. Senior Realm Lord must be joking. When others obtain realm artifacts, how would they go around announcing it? Where would I learn of it? The other Shore Realm Lord's avatar sighed inwardly. She had only asked casually. The Central Plains were so vast, how would Fang Chen know? She sighed helplessly. Forget it. Let's just say it was picked up by a dog. When I descend upon the Central Plains, I'll drag him out myself. Of course, I'll find you too, you black-hearted scoundrel. Her words fell and she leaped up, plunging into the void without looking back, heading straight back to the Hell Realm. Fang Chen stood rooted to the spot, speechless. Had their accounts not been settled yet? He had already returned the Book of Life and Death to her. Fortunately, the Hell Realm had its hands full for the time being and couldn't come to the Central Plains. He needn't worry too much. He sighed, then bent down to pick up the memory silver sand and the Hell's Eye, carefully stowing them into his spatial storage artifact. Afterwards, he swept his gaze around. The entire land was riddled with holes and had completely turned into blackened, scorched earth. Suddenly, in the wasteland, he spotted a half-buried silver long skirt with blood, red hair spread out, revealing a beautiful face with cold, sharp features. It was the corpse of Dongfang Canyu. Fang Chen's eyes lit up. Such a beautiful person, wouldn't it be a shame not to draw her blood? He rushed forward in a few quick strides, dug out the corpse, casually dusted off the dirt, and tossed it into the spatial mirror. After carefully cleaning up the battlefield and making sure nothing was left behind, he walked up to the great ancient saint and bowed deeply. I have disturbed the ancient saint's peace. This junior takes his leave. As soon as the words left his mouth, he was about to rise and depart. Suddenly, a gentle breeze blew, and the branches and leaves of the majestic ancient tree behind the ancient saint rustled. A peculiar leaf emitting 9-colored light drifted slowly down from the canopy. It spun gently through the air and landed precisely on Fang Chen's chest, then froze in place. A 9-colored leaf. Fang Chen was stunned for a moment, then his eyes flickered with surprise, and it seems. It's for me. He hesitantly took out a jade box. Before he could figure out how to put the leaf inside, the 9-colored leaf flew in on its own, resting quietly within. Fang Chen looked puzzled. What on earth was this thing? He examined it for a long time, but couldn't discern anything. It had neither oppressive pressure nor any trace of spiritual light. Only the leaf's surface faintly emitted a weak 9-colored radiance. Never mind, I'll keep it for now. Fang Chen stopped pondering and carefully slipped it into the heavenly thunderstone. He bowed to the ancient saint again and again, then turned around and strode away. Not long after, he finally returned to the 10th floor. Shura King was holding the one horned little heir, waiting with an anxious look. Seeing Fang Chen return safely, her heart, which had been hanging in suspense, finally settled back down. She couldn't help asking softly, did something major happen inside? I sensed several terrifying auras. Fang Chen briefly recounted what had just happened. After listening, unconcealable worry surged in her bright eyes, and she slowly said, so it seems this underground world is a place that both realms must contest. If the saint's corpse is lost, it might mean full-scale war between the two realms. Fang Chen nodded slightly and said gravely that could be said. He paused, then looked up at Shura King and solemnly said, Senior, let me take you away from this underground world. By entering my spatial mirror, you can evade the continent's restrictions. Hearing this, Shura King showed a relieved smile and whispered, Thank you. But then, with a sense of loss, she looked toward the coffin suspended above the abyss and murmured, however, I've accompanied my master my whole life. How can I bear to leave her? She thought for a moment, then lowered her head and gently handed the one horned little heir to Fang Chen, softly and trusting, take it out. Ruxu is kind and gentle, and you are upright and courteous. I am at ease leaving the little heir in your hands. Fang Chen immediately understood her intention. She wanted to stay here and guard her master until the very end. Respect welled up in his heart. He solemnly took the one horned little heir and said heavily, Very well. Ruxu and I will definitely bring the little heir back to visit you. Shura King cupped her hands in gratitude, then reluctantly stroked the little heir's head and smiled softly. Little heir, go find Sister Ruxu now. Goodbye. The one horned little heir was so happy that it bounced around in Fang Chen's arms, chirping and babbling to urge him to hurry. Fang Chen smiled knowingly, cupped his hands in farewell, and said clearly, farewell. Shura King stood rooted in place for a long time, watching them gradually recede into the distance, and only then murmured in an extremely soft voice, Take care, little heir. Take care, Ruxu, Fang Chen. At that moment, a putrid odor that she had been desperately suppressing slowly wafted out. Lone Boat City, the Zhu family estate. When Fang Chen returned, Liu Ruxu and Gong Keiyi were standing in the courtyard, instructing the clan members in cultivation. The two would occasionally lower their heads and whisper to each other, exchanging hushed words. The moment they noticed Fang Chen's figure, they hurriedly and guiltily stopped talking. A faint blush rose on Liu Ruxu's cheeks as she asked softly, Zio Fan, you're back. Fang Chen eyed the two suspiciously, then walked straight up and handed the one horned little heir to Liu Ruxu. He explained, Ayuasura King has entrusted us to look after it for now. The moment Liu Ruxu saw the one horned little heir, she burst into a radiant, delighted smile and cheered, "Little heir, you came too." The one horned little heir leaped excitedly straight into Liu Ruxu's embrace, nuzzling against her affectionately. Fang Chen did not disturb them. He returned alone to the bridal chamber, and as soon as he entered, he quickly took out the dog bowl. He couldn't help but mutter self-deprecatingly, "These past 2 days I actually forgot to use the dog bowl. Beauty has led me astray." He hastily took out the Hell's Eye, the 9-colored leaf, and the Yin Marrow Tiger Tally that he had just obtained. But these items were either longer than the dog bowl, or simply couldn't be duplicated at all. After thinking for a moment, he took out the void feather robe he had obtained from Yanwang Xie. With this robe, one could soar freely through the void. Naturally, one could never have too many such precious garments. The void feather robe was as light as a swan's feather, soft and exquisite. Fang Chen squeezed it into a tight ball, just small enough to fit into the dog bowl. After placing it inside, the dog bowl slowly activated. Before long, with a soft rustle, a brand new void feather robe popped out of the dog bowl. Fang Chen picked up the 2 void feather robes, a hint of a smile curling at the corner of his mouth, and muttered to himself, "I wonder which unlucky fellow's robe the treasure bowl has snatched." Just as he was about to carefully compare the 2 robes, the moon realm in his bosom suddenly rang. Opening it, he saw it was a message from Liu Qingxian. The message read, "West Palace. Zio Fan, the Grand Libationer, has asked me to inform you to hurry to the coastline assembly point." Ever since she was deeply moved by the scene of Liu Ruxu's grand wedding, Liu Qingxian had quietly changed her name in the Moon Realm from Main Palace to West Palace. With her as the West Palace, Liu Ruxu was naturally the East Palace. She willingly settled for second place. Fang Chen saw the message and frowned slightly, replying quickly, "Good name. Has something happened?" The Grand Libationer and I agreed on a 3-day period, and now only just over 2 days have passed. Why suddenly advance the assembly? West Palace, the Shura Holy Son, is dispersing the lingering souls across the provinces. Seeing this, Fang Chen instantly understood the Shura Holy Son didn't want him to gain merit by releasing the souls. He couldn't obtain it himself, so he wasn't about to let Fang Chen get an easy advantage. How utterly detestable! Fang Chen dared not delay any longer. Merit was secondary. What he truly couldn't bear was that after dying in battle, those souls would still be dispersed by the Shura Holy Son. He quickly put away the 2 void feather robes and hurried to find Liu Ruxu and Gong Keiyi, explaining the situation. Liu Ruxu immediately nodded. "Since my husband has urgent matters, let us leave now." The 3 reluctantly bid farewell to Zhu Zhenyan and the Zhu family, then swiftly headed to the agreed meeting point. The Grand Libationer of Taking Province and the Artisan Sage were already waiting there. Out of caution, Fang Chen asked them to first display the Merit Divine Steel, confirming they were indeed both sages after all, no matter how skilled at disguise the Shura Holy Son was. He was only one person, and couldn't possibly impersonate 2 sages at once. After confirming, Fang Chen cupped his hands to the Artisan Sage and said, "I must trouble you, Senior Artisan, to escort my 2 wives to Tianju to meet up with the Heavenly Anism Pavilion. I will accompany the Grand Libationer for the time being." Hearing this, the Artisan Sage couldn't help but laugh and scold. "You brat, ordering around a sage. You've got nerve." Fang Chen smiled slightly and immediately took out 10 drops of law wine, offering them, naturally, "I won't let you help for nothing." "That's more like it." The Artisan Sage grabbed them, laughing heartily, then immediately drew Liu Ruxu and Gong Keiyi to his side through the air, solemnly instructing, "Be careful." "Oh, that cunning Shura Holy Son would never do something pointless for revenge. This move may have other intentions." Fang Chen nodded. "Thank you for the warning, Senior Artisan." He had the same feeling in his heart. Such a petty act of revenge seemed too petty, not at all like the Shura Holy Son's character. Instead, it felt like a deliberate ploy to lure him there. The Grand Libationer, holding his horsetail whisk, with his white eyebrows twitching slightly, said slowly, "He appeared in the Great Wilderness Province not long ago and destroyed the battlefield there." Alerted, the Grand Libationers of each province have already stationed themselves at their respective battlefields. It will be difficult for him to make easy moves now. But to avoid further complications, you must hurry to release those souls. We'll go to another province first, and we must get ahead of him. Fang Chen thought for a moment, then said firmly, "Then let's go to the Myriad Demon Province first." The Grand Libationer nodded. Half an hour later, Myriad Demon Province, Spirit Snake Mountain. The battlefield of both sides was not far from Spirit Snake Mountain. Fang Chen, holding the scripture of suppressing hell and pacifying souls, devoutly released the dead souls on the battlefield. One after another, clusters of ethereal dead souls bid him farewell, then slowly disappeared into some part of the void. Finally, a half piece of golden feather slowly drifted down and merged into the body of the little Killen. Fang Chen carefully put away the scripture of suppressing hell and pacifying souls, and solemnly cupped his hands to the people of Myriad Demon Province, who had come to pay silent tribute, saying gravely, "Everyone, please accept my condolences." In truth, compared to Taking Province, the situation in Myriad Demon Province was already much better. Because they had the help of the 9 Nether Demon Venerable, their casualties were not particularly severe. The Golden Scale Venerable stepped forward, cupping his hands. "Thank you for your trouble, Fang Chen." Fang Chen returned the courtesy. "It was my duty." Just then, a graceful figure in emerald green darted out from the crowd, running over in quick steps. It was Ling Shu. She held the hem of her skirt with one hand, her entire figure like a wisp of green spring breeze, lightly passing through fields, over villages, all the way soaring into the sky. A gentle smile immediately welled up in Fang Chen's eyes. He silently opened his arms and embraced the slender figure that came running. Feeling the thin yet especially warm body in his arms, his heart felt particularly grounded. The reason he had come to Myriad Demon Province first was to see Ling Shu. "Just seeing you alive is enough." Fang Chen buried his face deep into her long hair, greedily inhaling the familiar fragrance among the strands. Ling Shu also snuggled tightly in his arms. Her previously haggard face was like clouds parting to reveal the moon, finally showing a long, lost smile as she softly replied, "Big brother too." The Golden Scale Venerable beside them finally let out a long sigh of relief and said with a wry smile, "This girl has finally come back to life. A day without seeing you in person, and she would be out of her mind all day like a walking corpse. If anything else were to happen to her, I wouldn't know how to answer to you." Hearing this, Fang Chen's heart filled with even more tenderness. He cupped Ling Shu's haggard little face, unable to bear leaving her alone in Myriad Demon Province, and said softly, "Come back with me to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion." Times had changed. From the spatial storage artifacts he had taken from the Shura Holy Son, there were plenty of resources suitable for the demon race. Even staying at the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion, Ling Shu could still grow sufficiently. But to Fang Chen's surprise, after a brief flash of delight, Ling Shu gently shook her head and said seriously, "I'm not going back. Senior 9, Nether Demon Venerable wants to take me as a disciple. He wants to take me into the void, to a place more suitable for my cultivation."
"What?"
Fang Chen was startled, his gaze immediately turning to the Golden Scale Venerable. The Golden Scale Venerable nodded, a look of heartfelt envy on his face, and explained, "Isn't Ling Shu gifted with the ability to absorb strange energies?" After the 9 Nether Demon Venerable discovered this, he felt she could forge a completely new path and wanted to properly cultivate a unique powerhouse of the demon race. With that, the Golden Scale Venerable sighed inwardly as well. Back then, Lu Zhu and Liu Lai were also sealed in black mysterious ice, after they were thawed. Liu Lai recovered as normal, but Ling Shu was able to absorb the strange energies within. Now, by a twist of fate, she has also been noticed by the 9 Nether Demon Venerable, who travels in the void year-round. Should this be said to be her good fortune, or Liu Lai's bad luck? Without realizing it, Fang Chen was already tightly holding Ling Shu's arm, his voice betraying unconcealable tension. "You agreed." Ling Shu gently shook her head, gazing at Fang Chen's worn and slightly haggard face. Her crystalline eyes gradually misted over, her voice was soft but resolute. "No. I hadn't considered it thoroughly before, but now I've made up my mind. I want to acknowledge the 9 Nether Demon Venerable as my master, and follow him into the void." The moment she saw Fang Chen's face full of fatigue, she finally saw her life's goal clearly. Fang Chen felt a hollow in his heart. The emotional scar that should have long disappeared suddenly ached. Almost subconsciously, he murmured, "Can you not go?" Ling Shu's eyes glistened with tears, but she still stubbornly shook her head, choking with emotion. "I don't want Big Brother to be so tired anymore. I also want to be like Big Sister Yunsheng and Big Sister Zhenyan, able to help you and share your burdens. I can't always be the girl you protect and shelter. It's time for me to grow up." Having experienced the life and death peril of the ancient giant war, having heard of Fang Chen's many brushes with death, and having witnessed Fang Chen's exhaustion with her own eyes, Ling Shu seemed to have grown up in an instant. She could no longer be the little girl who only knew to cry for her brother. Now that a great predecessor of the demon race like the 9 Nether Demon Venerable had personally delivered an opportunity, how could she let this fleeting chance slip away? The Golden Scale Great Venerable beside them sighed and advised, Fang Chen, you can rest assured of the 9 Nether Demon Venerables' strength and character. His aim is to nurture a second sage for the demon race. If you truly care for Ling Shu, let her take him as her master. Besides, the 9 Nether Demon Venerable is not leaving immediately. He will remain at least until there are no more hidden dangers in the Central Plains before stepping into the Void again. During this time, you two can still meet often. Fang Chen understood this reasoning perfectly well. Yet, gazing at Ling Shu, whose frail figure looked as if a single gust of wind could blow her away, the overwhelming reluctance in his heart pressed down on him until he could barely breathe. He drew a deep breath, forced his churning emotions down with sheer reason, and spoke a single soft word, fine. Before you leave, come back to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion often so I can see you. Ling Shu's tears instantly rolled down. She threw herself into Fang Chen's arms, sobbing softly, brother. Fang Chen patted her back gently, then with a flip of his hand produced a divine enlightenment spike and a trove of demon race resources. Putting on a stern face, he said, take these, train diligently during this time. When you come to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, if I see no improvement, I will punish you. Ling Shu wiped her tears haphazardly, her face still streaked with them, yet she couldn't help but cry and laugh at once. Pouting coquettishly, she retorted, then I won't train. I want to see how you would punish me, HMPH. The onlookers were rendered utterly speechless by the girl's words. Liu Lai rolled her eyes dramatically and shouted in a sour tone, the opportunities never come to me, but every time there's a lovey-dovey show, I'm the audience. You two are really something else. At these words, the crowd could hold back no longer and burst into roaring laughter. Fang Chen couldn't help but chuckle as well. He then took out another divine enlightenment spike and a set of demon race resources, handing them over. These are for you too. Only then did Liu Lai beam with joy. She gleefully grabbed them and chirped, that's more like it, all is forgiven. Watching this scene, the Golden Scale Great Venerable showed a look of deep gratitude. Other demon race resources were one thing, but this divine enlightenment spike was a treasure rarely found anywhere in the world. After a moment's thought, he flipped his hand and brought out a sphere formed from highly concentrated demonic energy. Within the sphere, countless spirit rains were sealed, the very same blessed nectar that had fallen from the heavens when the compassionate sage fell. These spirit rains had the miraculous effect of granting an immediate breakthrough to nascent soul stage cultivators, and for deity transformation cultivators, they could heal rise and deepen enlightenment. Fang Chen had been forced to flee under pursuit by the Shura Holy Son, and so had no chance to fully receive this blessing. He had never imagined the Black Dragon, Great Venerable Ha-D, collected so much for him. Take it to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion. The Black Dragon, Great Venerable, smiled as he tossed the luminous orb of sealed spirit rain over. Fang Chen caught it reverently with both hands. Thank you, Great Venerable. He paused, suddenly recalling something, and quickly asked, does the Black Dragon, Great Venerable's cave residence still remain? Now that he was in the Myriad Demon Great Prefecture, he couldn't pass up the chance to inquire about the Black Dragon, Great Venerable's throne treasury. The purple crystal ore inside was still vivid in Fang Chen's memory. He had not only obtained cleansing spirit liquid, speed, enhancing shoes, and a mysterious black wood from within, but more importantly, in the depressions atop the crystal ore were numerous black frozen coffins condensed from anomalous power. Those were all precious resources that could extract anomalous power for Ling Shu to use. Furthermore, the 8 grand characters engraved in those depressions, if successfully imprinted, would replicate the heaven, defying ability of that tattered cloth fragment to collapse. See the world barrier and reveal the void. To his regret, the Golden Scale Great Venerable could only wear a look of remorse, shaking his head with a sigh. A man like him, how would he willingly abandon his own cave reside? And see! Back when he collapsed the world, drawing me and the ice-hot Great Venerable away to mend the void, he seized the chance to sneak back, empty his cave of everything, and take all his trusted subordinates with him. Fang Chen listened, his face a mask of regret. That was truly a pity. After all, he still held the key to that throne treasury. If he could obtain the throne, he could open it directly. I wonder where the Black Dragon Great Venerable has hidden himself, Fang Chen murmured. If he ever encountered that fellow again, with the immortal, binding jade branch, or the karmic power he had obtained from the Lord of the Hell Realm, he was confident he could completely suppress him. Shaking his head, Fang Chen reined in his thoughts, glanced at the time, and then released Ling Shu from his embrace. I must still travel to the other prefectures to liberate the wandering souls. Remember to train diligently and return to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion whenever you can, Fang Chen once again admonished. Ling Shu reluctantly let go of Fang Chen, nodding firmly as tears welled in her eyes. I will, brother. Without further hesitation, Fang Chen turned and, together with the Grand Libationer, hastened away to the next great prefecture. In the following days, they successively visited the Divine Armament Prefecture, the Pill Prefecture, the Holy Spirit Prefecture, and the ruins of Return Prefecture. Throughout their journey, all was peaceful, and they found not a single trace of the Shura Holy Son. Fang Chen was puzzled. Could it be that the Shura Holy Son only ever went to the Great Wilderness Prefecture? Carrying this doubt, they finally arrived at the Great Wilderness Prefecture. The battlefield that had been devastated by the blood, red spear, stretched before them, still a heart-trenching expanse of scorched earth. Fang Chen held the scripture of suppressing hell and pacifying souls and began the rites of liberation, but for a long time not a single lingering soul appeared. His expression instantly darkened. The souls of the dead here, they have all vanished. At that moment the drunken Grand Libationer came staggering over, reeking heavily of alcohol. She stumbled, eyes unfocused, and mumbled indistinctly, "These souls aren't the main point. He also went to another place. I just discovered it too. Don't scold me, okay? Hic tilde." Before her words ended, she let out a loud drunken hiccup. Then her eyes rolled back, and she promptly fell asleep on the spot. The Grand Libationer of the Taking Great Prefecture shook his head helplessly and sighed. In the end, she still cannot take that second step. Then, training his gaze into the distance, his brow furrowed deeply. It was my oversight. With that, he grabbed Fang Chen, and with a flicker, they instantly appeared before an enormous sinkhole. This was not created by war, but the terrifying remnant left behind when the ginkgo tree uprooted itself. This place was once the forbidden land of the Great Wilderness. The ginkgo tree had once ruled here as a tyrant, weaving its dense miasma of demonic fluid into a colossal bird's nest labyrinth that stretched across the sky. Any living creature trapped within found escape nearly impossible. Yet now, that skyken, sealing miasma of demonic fluid, had completely vanished. Fang Chen's expression drastically shifted in alarm. Could it be the Shura Holy Son took it all? The ginkgo tree had once explained that this demonic fluid was the shed exuvie of a true demon, and a supplement for a true demon's reincarnation, helping it awaken into a demon sooner. It had planned to take this massive, hidden peril into the void when it left the Central Plains. But plans could not keep pace with change. To save the drunken Grand Libationer, the ginkgo tree had used its body to block a strike from the blood, red spear, and was blasted apart, leaving only its crown. In such a weakened state, it was utterly incapable of taking the demonic fluid with it. In that case, had that boundless miasma of demonic fluid all fallen into the hands of the Shura Holy Son? But what did he plan to do with it? A faint but acute unease began to stir in Fang Chen's heart. The Grand Libationer of Taking Great Prefecture's gaze grew profound, and he said gravely, "No matter what he is scheming, the final target is you. As long as we protect you, his plans will be difficult to carry out. If the Shura Holy Son truly wished to leave, he could have torn open the void and escaped the Central Plains long ago. The reason he remains even now is solely because of Fang Chen. Therefore, as long as Fang Chen is protected, everything will be easily resolved." Fang Chen frowned slightly. He felt that the Shura Holy Son's schemes were definitely not aimed merely at a single deity transformation cultivator like him. But for now, he could only deal with whatever came his way. "Let us head to the Heavenly Prefecture first. The Merits Assembly begins in half a day." The Grand Libationer suddenly glanced at Fang Chen's chest and bluntly warned, "The merits carried by this little spirit beast will inevitably be coveted. Prepare your defenses early." Fang Chen's heart jolted with alarm at these words. The little Killen not only bore the merits from liberating souls across 6 prefectures, but it originally possessed a divine merit pearl, and a feather of merit had also descended from the heavenly realm. The total merits it now accumulated were already comparable to those of the Wutong Great Venerable. Such immense merits were enough to move the heart of any Great Venerable who was undergoing the 5 declines of heaven and man. The Golden Scale Great Exalted and the few other familiar Great Exalteds would be fine. Considering the camaraderie of fighting side by side, they presumably wouldn't harbor any ill intentions. However, the Great Exalteds from Heaven Province might not be so accommodating. Especially that young emperor, with his tyrannical ways. If he learned of the little Killen's existence, how could he not try to snatch it? However, if Fang Chen does not go to Heaven Province, his merits from the ancient giant war will not be able to be claimed. He clenched his teeth and resolutely said, "I must trouble the Great Libationer to send me to Heaven Province." This was not only for merit, but even more for Chen Xiling. He had to make this trip to Heaven Province. The great Libationer nodded slowly and said no more. Not long after, everyone arrived at the Imperial Observatory and activated the province-level teleportation array leading to Heaven Province. Fang Chen's heart surged with anticipation, secretly wondering what that legendary martial Holy Land, said to be worth 8 provinces, truly looked like. Speaking of which, Fang Chen's group teleported to the Imperial Observatory of Heaven Province. Looking around, each province's Imperial Observatory was situated at the continent's center, monopolizing a vein of spiritual energy with no surrounding power daring to approach. Only the central province's Imperial Observatory had numerous powers standing tall and had even formed an urban sprawl stretching for 10,000 li. Standing here and gazing north, a thunder mountain hung suspended within the canopy of heaven, with faint flashes of lightning. Looking southward, a brilliant bright moon hung high in the sky, clear as a mirror. Gazing east, an unending expanse of golden temples stretched to the horizon, magnificent as a Buddha kingdom. Surveying west, ancient divine sects and great teachings exuded a remarkable atmosphere. Within this radius of 10,000 li alone, countless powerhouses gathered. In the entire central province, sects and teachings were as numerous as carps crossing a river, too many to count. However, at this moment, in a palace at the foot of the Imperial Observatory, the powerhouses of taking Great Province were gathered together, the atmosphere unfriendly. They were not welcomed in Heaven Province, and the reason was simple jealousy. Taking Great Province had already become the most admired province among the remaining 6. But this admiration was not solely because taking Great Province was the first to achieve a great victory. Every province had poured their all into the ancient giant war, sacrificing countless benevolent and righteous martyrs, and all took pride in their own province. In this regard, there was originally no winner or loser, and no one wished to dispute it. However, the deity transformation realm experts of taking Great Province, following Fang Chen across the heavenly realms, descended like divine soldiers into the independent Gixu province, slaughtered the half-giants, and personally executed the merciful sage. This feat that shook the universe truly filled the experts of all provinces with profound respect. How the half-giants wreaked havoc and pushed the central land to the brink of destruction, and how that old merciful sage aided the tyrant, they had all seen with their own eyes. As the Great War ended, the experts of all provinces had all entertained the thought of acting on behalf of heaven and rooting out the malignant tumor. Alas, either out of fear of the sage's ferocious might, or because Gixu province was isolated and difficult to enter, they ultimately let it go. Unexpectedly, not long after, rumors spread that the half-giants had been almost entirely slaughtered, followed by the heaven-shaking news of the merciful sage's fall, erupting like a thunderclap. This directly triggered an earthquake among the experts of all provinces. Even the ancient giant war was so brutal, yet no sage had fallen, so his strength was beyond doubt. But now, he had actually been slain by his vengeful Central Land compatriots. And the ones who accomplished this near-impossible feat were precisely the powerhouses of taking Great Province. How could this not make the experts of the other 6 provinces sincerely admire them? Thus, when the 7 provinces' experts gathered in Heaven Province, the courtesy take in Great Province received was self-evident. For several days in a row, in front of the palace where taking Great Province stationed in Heaven Province, there was an endless stream of traffic and visitors. From the great exalteds of each province down to nascent soul stage cultivators, all came to pay respects out of admiration. Even some small and medium-sized powers in Heaven Province, hearing of this, also extended goodwill and took the initiative to visit. For a time, all sorts of rumors about taking Great Province spread like wildfire. Some said that taking Great Province's great victory was the true turning point of the Central Land's war. Some said that without taking Great Province, the Central Land would have surely lost. Still, others claimed that taking Great Province was the true center of the Central Land. The spread of these words made the various powers in Heaven Province, who had also suffered heavy casualties, feel deeply aggrieved. They thought to themselves, the Dark Shura tribe came with overwhelming force. When did Heaven Province ever not resist tenaciously? These words made it sound as if they were merely freeloaders. Finally, a power that couldn't sit still came to the taking Great Province's palace to demand an explanation. At this moment, in the main hall of the palace, the first-rank tower Lord of Fang Chen sat in the host seat, his expression calm, and slowly spoke. Fellow Taoists of the medicine Odd Hall, our taking Great Province came here solely to make friends, and has absolutely no desire to make enemies. On either side of him stood deity transformation experts like Red Demon Venerable and Zhang Wuya from taking Great Province. all with annoyed expressions but discreetly guarding Yu Mingzhu at the rear. In the center of the hall also stood a pair of young man and woman, appearing no more than 30 years old. But both had 5 flaming divine halos manifesting behind their heads. Clearly, they were 2 great exalteds of the 5 declines of celestial beings. The male great exalted wore a black alchemy robe, exuding a dignified and imposing air, his eyes brimming with disdainful arrogance. The woman also wore a black alchemy robe with a purple pill-shaped ornament tied at her waist. Between the two, it was clear the woman was the leader. The woman had a melon's seed face, tied her hair in a ponytail, and was fairly pretty, but her eyes held a condescending look. The female great exalted sneered and aggressively said, "Our medicine god hole of Heaven province also doesn't want to make enemies on the condition that the things that woman stole be returned." The first rank tower Lord of Fang Chen's expression remained composed. The reason he was being polite was entirely because these two had too great a background. After all, the Medicine God Hall was an ancient great teaching second only to the Young Emperor Mountain, the Moon Palace, and the Buddha Kingdom, with a history of at least 10,000 years. Its current master had even remained in the Central Land to refine a heaven and dearth grand pill. How could he dare to casually make an enemy of such a transcendent power? But the other side was pushing too far, actually demanding that Yu Mingzhu hand over the relics of the old man wanking. This put him in quite a dilemma. If they were to fall out on the spot, he wouldn't fear the other party daring to act recklessly, since they had the Central Province's great libationer protecting them. But he worried that these two would cause trouble for Yu Mingzhu in private. Yu Mingzhu's eyes were already blazing with fury. This woman actually said she had stolen them. Those were all relics of Old Man Wanking. Wouldn't that be insulting Old Man Wanking by implying he stole their things? She was never one to suffer grievances, especially when it also insulted Old Man Wanking. Immediately, Yu Mingzhu yelled in a delicate voice, "When did my master's relics become stolen from your medicine god hall? Why don't you say the entire Central Land is yours?" The female great exalted glanced sidelong at Yu Mingzhu, looking displeased. Are all people of take, in great province so lacking in respect for hierarchy? Shouting at a great exalted, it's utterly improper. Her sharp gaze carried the pressure of the 5 declines of celestial beings, causing Yu Mingzhu to stagger suddenly. Her blood and kai roiled within, and a trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. The first rank tower, Lord of Fang Chen's gaze sharpened. He suddenly slammed the table and roared in anger, "Insolence! Of 5 declines of celestial being attacking a nascent soul stage, have you no shame?" At the same time, he released a powerful aura, isolating the female great exalted's gaze. At this, the female great exalted's face grew colder, sneering. "What? You bunch of thieves still not convinced?" The male great exalted also released the pressure of the 5 declines of celestial beings, his voice deep and oppressive, "Want to fight? This is Heaven province, not your taking great province. Weigh yourselves properly." The pressure deliberately released by the 2 great exalteds caused the entire palace to rumble and shake violently. The surface arrays flickered on and off, on the verge of collapse. Those inside the palace fared even worse. Even deity transformation cultivators felt extremely uncomfortable, let alone the nascent soul stage members of Tianji Pavilion. The first rank tower Lord of Fang Chen was burning with fury, thinking to himself that if it came to this, he might as well fall out and draw the great libationer's intervention. At that moment, a huge mirror suddenly appeared above the male great exalted's head, and a palm shot out without warning, slapping right at his head. The male great exalted timely sensed it and exclaimed in shock, "Lianjing great exalted." He raised his hand to block, but the palm was full of force. Only a dull thud was heard. His arms were slapped painfully, and his entire body was forcibly smashed into the ground, leaving only his head exposed. The Lianjing Great Exalted did not pause. A mirror domain was instantly activated, slicing at his neck, intending to sever his head. The female Great Exalted's expression drastically changed. She decisively activated her own domain, a phantom pill furnace manifesting, swallowing the mirror domain into its furnace to refine it. The 2 domains clashed against each other and then successively exploded, turning into residual might that spread in all directions. The Lianjing Great Exalted exerted force again, and another spatial mirror coalesced, taking all the many powerhouses of taking great province into the mirror, isolating them from the dispersing aftershocks. The female Great Exalted hastily pulled up the male Great Exalted, looking annoyed. "Lianjing Great Exalted, have you gone mad?" Those 2 strikes just now were clearly lethal moves from Lianjing Great Exalted. Had she not saved him in time, her senior brother would likely have been in danger. Lianjing Great Exalted's face was filled with frost as she coldly said, "Daring to touch my son's people, you are the ones who are mad."
"What?"
The two great exalteds of Medicine God Hall were horrified. Wasn't Lianjing Great Exalted's son the young emperor? Were these people, before them, actually, the young emperor's people? Who could afford to provoke the young emperor? The two immediately wanted to back down, but looking at Yu Mingzhu, they were still extremely unwilling. Lianjing Great Exalted turned to look at the crowd and asked with concern, "Are you all right?" When her gaze swept over the first, ranked tower lord of Fang Chen, she showed confusion. When had taking Great Province produced a Great Exalted of the 5 declines of Celestial Bay? NGS, she had no idea. The first ranked tower lord of Fang Chen was dazed for a moment before regaining his composure and said softly, "No serious harm for now. Many thanks to fellow Taoist Lianjing for intervening."